And welcome back. The Northern Manhattan Tenant Union originated as a collective of residents organizing within buildings owned by Sugar Hill Capital Partners. In both 2021 and 2022, executives from Sugar Hill Capital ranked number 1 and number 7, respectively, on the New York City Public Advocate's worst landlord watch list due to numerous building violations and evictions. Joining me now and sharing more is on this matter. We've got two members of the Northern Manhattan Tenant Union. We've got Blazej and Joy Nelson, and thank you both for joining us here. I want to get the opportunity to talk a little bit about where you are and what is going on. And I guess I'll start off first with you, Adam. For those who may be in the city not knowing exactly where you're located, give us a little location.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having us on. My name's Adam, and I live in Inwood. I live on Cooper Street in Inwood, which, the tippy top of Manhattan.
And so when we talk about what's going on, we talk about the fact that you've got a union that is really coming together to really deal with the issues of no response to repairs and a multitude of things. But talk to us about the union.
Yeah, so the union started, as you said, as a coalition of tenants under the same landlord. The landlord is Sugar Hill Capital Partners, which is a private equity firm that owns something like 70 or so buildings, mostly in Northern Manhattan, but also in central Brooklyn. And they manage their properties through management companies, one of which is Tri-Hill Management, and another is Choice Management. So the coalition started as just tenants of Tri-Hill. So we were the Tri-Hill Tenants Coalition. And back in November, this is November 2022, Joy, myself, and some other tenant leaders who had been organizing for better housing conditions in our homes and on our blocks for some years, I think had realized that we were going up against something bigger than ourselves, and it was nothing that certainly one tenant could do, and perhaps nothing that one building could really address. That trying to seek justice and action from Sugar Hill Capital Partners really required a large group of tenants. So we started talking about tenants from half a dozen or a dozen different buildings from Inwood, Washington Heights, and Harlem, about the problems in our buildings, identifying patterns of problems. And one of the first things that we did together was we started a petition, collecting signatures for a petition to demand that New York Theological Seminary revoke an award that they gave to the president of Sugar Hill Capital Partners. They gave an Urban Angel Award to our landlord in 2022. And the point of the petition was to tell New York Theological Seminary that our landlord is nothing but an urban angel. Certainly not an angel, barely urban. And we collected signatures from about 400 tenants and other community members. And that was one of our first actions to sort of bring us together.
Yeah. Let me bring Joy in and talk a little bit about the residential conditions right now. What are those conditions? We hear a lot about what people are dealing with, but what are people actually contending with?
Well, for starters, again, I've been here 33 years, raised my kids and grandkids here. It used to be a beautiful dwelling until these people took over. Um, you can call for repairs and you would never speak to a person. You would speak to a machine and they'll wait a couple of weeks and then they'll close something they call a ticket, a work ticket. Uh, I've had awful experiences. We've had illegal scaffolding up for over 15 years with no explanation or nothing. Which attracted raccoons from Central Park. I live at 306 West 112th Street, between 8th and Manhattan Avenues. And so, I woke up one morning and the raccoon was trying to get in my window. I have one of my grandchildren are special needs. In addition to that, I'm not that fond of raccoons. I've come home. I have a catering business, and I've come home different times in the night. You find people having sex under the scaffolding. Somebody on the sixth floor literally got robbed. Um, People sleeping. We had a whole entire family sleeping on our roof because the doors were broken. You could get out of the building, but you couldn't get in the building, so we had to call the fire department. Lately, we've had an 82-year-old man, heart attack victim, who apparently his doctor told him to go for a walk every day. He went for a walk, and when it was time to come back, the elevator was broke. So it took two tenants to literally carry this man upstairs, and he cried from the first floor to the sixth floor. He cried.
Wow.
So those type of things. Somebody got shot in front of my building, and the cops came and they were asking all of the supers, which at that time we had a super and a porter on the premises. Now we have neither. Um, they were asking them, who has the footage to this camera that's on your building, because this is exactly where this young man was shot. And when they did get in touch with Tri Hill told them that that camera has not ever worked. It was fake and it was a deterrent. Well, if it was a deterrent, how come somebody got shot in front of the building?
Yeah, a lot to contend with. So let's talk a little bit about response and where we are right now, because obviously several complaints coming from where you are, Joy. Adam, the same way. What has been this response, and where are we with things right now?
I just put a couple of months ago. We're not supposed to have washing machines in my building, and somebody above me had an illegal washing machine, so I've been having leaks. They came and the maintenance guy, he literally took down the wet sheetrock. He took it down. And I'm waiting for this guy to come back weeks later. So I called the office and I said, William came and he started the work. And when is he gonna come and plaster? They said you need to put in another ticket. I said, another ticket, but he took my ceiling down. It's all one job. Why do I have to put in if I'm requiring plastering and you have to remove the old plaster? He told me he had to let it dry, which made sense. Let it dry so you can plaster. Then you have to let the new plaster dry, of course, so you can paint. I had to put in 3 help tickets for that. And I think that is absolutely ludicrous. It's one job.
Adam, talk to me about gentrification, because we know that, living in New York, particularly New York City, it's not the way it used to look. And I come to the borough of the Bronx. You've got people who say it's a tale of two boroughs. On one side, you've got new construction. On the other side, you got public housing. You got people out here saying, we've got gentrification that we're dealing with every day.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole can of worms. But I think, in short, Sugar Hill Capital Partners is a gentrifier extraordinaire. Myself, I've only lived in New York City for 10, 12 years. I only just came to Inwood, where I'm at now, a few years ago. And in a sense, like, I am like a product of gentrification, in part because I had to move from where my family was before in the city because we couldn't pay the rents. So we ended up where we are now. And if not for rent stabilization, we certainly could not continue to live in the city. But yeah, I think, Sugar Hill Capital Partners, like, part of their role in this process of gentrification is they are buying up huge swaths of land across Northern Manhattan, but also Central Brooklyn, and divesting essentially from those areas, not investing in the buildings, not investing in the neighborhoods, or certainly the people. And really, they just use these properties to squeeze wealth out of the tenants, and to get cheap loans, from their lenders, that they can then use to finance other, more, from their perspective, more lucrative projects. So in the case of, like, where Joy's at, like South Brooklyn, or sorry, South Harlem, this is a neighborhood that over the last, like, 10 years, I don't know the exact numbers, but has lost a significant amount of black residents, and this is in large part due just to worsening housing conditions, ever increasing rents, and aggressive tactics to displace long-term tenants. And Sugar Hill Capitals is just one player in that. Their main way of doing it is just as Joy was describing, like in her building, in my building, in dozens of other buildings. They have tried before 2019. Their tactic was make conditions in the buildings as worse as possible, so that people want to leave or don't no longer want to live where their home is, and either do a buyout or just get people to do quote unquote self-evict.
Yeah, Joy. I need Joy. I want Joy to stand by for a minute because I want you. I'm coming back to you 1 second, Joy. I want to ask the question from you, Adam. Joy's talked about what's going on in her place. What are we seeing in your place?
At my place, there are like three main worries. I think one, Joy already mentioned, which is that when they bought our building, one of the first things they did to cut expenses was they got rid of the super. So before Sugar Hill Capital bought the building, there was a live-in super in my building. Not that he was like terribly great and that everyone loved him, but he lived in the building and he was here to take care of things as needed, and that's no longer the case. And currently, the super. So for some time, our super lived in Queens, which was just not good for either us or for him. But now the super for our building manages 3 different buildings, over 120 different units, that are occupied by people who are needing his assistance with various things, and it's just too much for one person. So that's one major issue. Another is our boiler is on its last legs, and all they do is just Band-Aid repairs. We went over 20 nights, I think 25 nights this last winter, which is relatively mild. We went over 20 nights without heat. And I have 2 small children. I have a 5-year-old and an infant. And it got so bad that an HPD inspector came to our building and wrote up a violation. The violation was, he told me, they hadn't maintained the boiler, and they had actually used illegal or inappropriate materials that could have caused a fire in the boiler room. And he told me that, and the HPD inspector told me that, this could cause a fire, and it caused a fire going up for whoever lives above the boiler room. And he didn't know it, but right above the boiler room is my son's room. And so that violation has been outstanding for about 4, maybe 5 months now. And the management company, the landlord, they know about the violation. I brought it to their attention, and we have not seen action. So those are just 2 things. A third thing is that they closed our garbage chute to our building. We live in a 6-story building with an elevator, but the elevator isn't reliable. And there are people who live there for 20, 30 years, been using the garbage chute for that whole time, but now no longer have access to the garbage chute and are having to go down to the basement using the unreliable elevator, down to a basement where there are rats and cockroaches and so on. And they have no plans to fix this garbage chute.
Right. Joy, mobilization is critical, right? Getting people involved, tenant rallies,
Yeah.
sharing the voice. I know that you guys had a tenant rally recently. Talk to us about how it is right now in terms of getting people mobilized and really getting their voice heard.
It's hard. I did this about 10 years ago, and I did a statewide because we actually didn't have any heat or hot water, not only over the Christmas break, but also over the Easter break. I have a granddaughter that's in a wheelchair. She can't do anything for herself, so that's not healthy. And in addition to that, we're actually just asking for basic human rights. We're paying for habitability, and that's what we want. We don't want to have to come in the building and can't get back out of the building, especially in case there's a fire. We have elderly people in here. We had a pregnant girl in here that got threatened by one of the people that was living on the roof. So mobilization in this building, which is only 28 units, and some of them, they won't even, fill the apartments. They're warehousing, and I understand that they don't have to fill them, but they're warehousing them because With the homeless population, you would think people would be knocking down their doors to get an apartment, and we have empty ones. But I think mobilization, um, well, for me, everything begins with mentality. And when you're thinking that they're gonna cut off my Section 8, they're gonna cut off my help that I'm getting from disability or public assistance or whatever it is that's helping them live, they're they're gonna back down every single time. Nobody's gonna put their how the money, that the little bit of money, that resources that they have, is gonna put it on a line for another tenant that's saying, look, don't you see this coming? Because that's what I told them. Look, don't you see this coming? Now mobilization is better because other people are experiencing what I've been telling them. The guy on the fifth floor was totally against it. He loved, oh, no, they do. Every time I ask them to fix something, they're here, Johnny quick, until a raccoon went inside his house and attacked him. And now he's one of the first ones at the rallies.
Hmm.
When you have this kind of people coming out, obviously a collective voice makes a huge amount of difference. I know rent strikes are a possibility as well. What are we looking at possibly as ways that you're looking to counter this?
I think one way forward is just to continue to grow our numbers. I'm of the belief that little will get done unless we build mass numbers of people to put pressure on those with their hands closest to the levers of power. We've done a good job, I think, of like building a coalition across Northern Manhattan. But part of the point of forming a tenant union is to broaden our efforts beyond just Sugar Hill Capital Partners, who's a slumlord, but there are plenty of other slumlords, and there are plenty of other people who are needing and willing to fight for better housing conditions in the city. So I think one step is just to broaden our efforts across Northern Manhattan, but we're also connecting too with tenants of Tri-Hill Management and of Sugar Hill Capital Partners in Central Brooklyn, because they're facing similar conditions, and they are also fed up. So I think ultimately down the line, what we need is something like a citywide tenant union, not just tenant unions for this or that neighborhood, but a tenant union across the city of working class tenants who are willing and able to fight back, through rent strikes, but through other means as well.
All righty. Well, we got to leave it there, Adam. We got to definitely leave it there, Joy, and we'll continue to follow this. Certainly, our thoughts go out to you with the situations that you're dealing with, and hopefully, we can just through this show raise our voice that maybe someone else will take note and bring correction to what's definitely needed for so many people. Thank you so much for being with us.
I just say one more thing. Awareness is the key. Awareness.
Right. We got to heighten the awareness. That's for sure. All righty. We're taking a quick break, and guess what? We'll be back with more right after this.